Fantasy football drafts are here, and I'm going to give you the number one strategy to crush your draft this year and make sure you win your fantasy league. So in this video here, I'm going to be covering the early rounds 1 through 4, and I think there are really only two ways you should attack these early rounds. Either a hero RB strategy where you draft one stud anchor running back and then get wide receiver, maybe an elite tight end or an elite quarterback, or you don't draft any running backs in these early rounds. And I know that might sound really scary, but it's okay. It's only 4 rounds. There's plenty of running back value in this year's draft. When I come out of these first 4 rounds in a PPR league, I want at least 2 wide receivers, either a stud tight end, a stud quarterback, or a stud running back. That's the goal here. So let's see how we can do that and ensure that you crush your draft this year. So let's begin with round 1. And I know you're going to be so tempted to take a running back here. It's just like a natural instinct. You got to take a running back in the first round. Oh my gosh, I cannot have a running back, but resist the urge. There are only 3 running backs I'm even considering in the first round. That is Christian McCaffrey, Austin Eckler, Bijan Robinson. And I'm not drafting one until at least pick 5 in the draft. So if other people in your league are going RB early because, again, just got to have that running back, take advantage of it, get the stud wide receivers. And the wide receivers I'm going to consider here are Justin Jefferson, the consensus number 1 pick in most drafts. We don't really need to go into why he's so good. Jamar Chase, tremendous upside entering year 3. I think we could absolutely see him smash this year. I also love Tyreek Hill, has tremendous upside in this offense. Tua just needs to stay healthy, which so far all signs pointing to good. And then Cooper Kupp, and I know there's some worry about his hamstring, but Sean McVay is saying it's day-to-day. I'm not worried yet. Obviously, if we get closer to the season and he's still not out there and he's still struggling with the hamstring, then maybe you can back off Cooper Kupp. But Cooper Kupp has been nothing but phenomenal in games with Matthew Stafford, so I'll happily take him in the first round. I also love CeeDee Lamb in the first round. I've been talking about him a bunch. I think out of those top 4 guys, he's the guy I would pick as the number 1 scoring wide receiver this year. Entering his prime, a true stud wide receiver in a great situation. Everything is there for him. And then, of course, we have, I guess, the old, reliable Stephon Diggs. Just keeps going year after year. Still was playing at an elite level last year, tied to Josh Allen. Gotta love Stephon Diggs in the first round. Also love A.J. Brown in the first round. I know there's some talk that maybe Devonta Smith will outscore A.J. Brown. And look, I love Devonta Smith. I was pretty high on him last year, but I'm not ready to do that yet. A.J. Brown in his prime, an absolute stud. I'll gladly take him. And then Garrett Wilson, primed to have a huge second year this year with Aaron Rodgers. No competition for targets. He's an elite player, ready to have a monster season. I'll happily take him in the first round. And then the last wide receiver I will consider in the first round is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Another guy, no competition for targets, is a stud, well over 100 catches, well over 1,000 yards, and could see positive regression in the touchdown department. So another wide receiver I will happily draft in the first round. And now before we move on to round 2, I got to talk about Travis Kelce. What do we do with Travis Kelce? Well, I certainly think he's worth a first round pick at a point. And that point for me is once those top 4 wide receivers are gone, Jefferson, Chase, Hill, and Kupp, again, assuming he's healthy. Once the running backs are gone, McCaffrey, Eckler, Bijan, and then maybe CeeDee Lamb. That is where I will start to consider Travis Kelce. But the guy gives you basically top 5 wide receiver numbers, top 5 running back numbers. So drafting him here isn't a big disadvantage. It's not like you're passing up on one of those elite wide receivers to get just an okay tight end. You're getting a difference-making tight end. So if we get to that point of the draft, Travis Kelce is still on the board. Those guys are gone. I will strongly consider Travis Kelce. Now on to round 2. And of course, if you didn't get your running back in round 1, this is where you should start considering your running back. Guys I really like if they fall to the second round. Saquon Barkley and Tony Pollard, 2 of my favorites. I think both these guys have tremendous upside this year. Both have the potential to be the top scoring running back. We know Saquon Barkley playing for a contract is going to be that entire Giants offense once again. And then Tony Pollard in a smash situation this year. They don't have anybody behind him of any consequence at all. He was awesome last year down the stretch as Zeke got phased out. As long as Dallas doesn't add somebody at the last hour here, which I highly doubt, Tony Pollard is set up to smash, just needs to stay healthy. I will happily gamble on that. Then I'd also be willing to gamble on Jonathan Taylor or Josh Jacobs, assuming they show up to camp at some point. These are both guys who we know are great running backs. They're going to get the lion's share of the work in their offense. Tons of touchdown upside. Jonathan Taylor, Josh Jacobs, they don't have massive pass catching upside, but they catch enough passes The big issue here, of course, is will they show up to camp and will they play? But as long as they're there in camp, ready to go by the time you're drafting, I will happily take these guys in the second round as my anchor RB. Now, if you went running back in the first round, or maybe those guys are gone, or you don't feel comfortable with them, you want to take another wide receiver, obviously any of the wide receivers I mentioned in round 1, if they fall to you here in round 2, grab them. But then there's some other guys I love here in the second round, like Jalen Waddle has tremendous upside this year. Yes, Tyreek Hill is the one, but Jalen Waddle is like the 1B, and it's like barely a B. I mean, this guy has massive weekly upside in this offense. Love Jalen Waddle. Also love Chris Olave. Another guy like Garrett Wilson, primed for a big second-year breakout. Has Derek Carr there. I'm not worried about Michael Thomas. The guy's going to stub his toe in like week 2, and we're never going to see him again. Chris Olave, a stud. Going to be the number 1 wide receiver for Derek Carr. And as we know, Derek Carr will pepper his number 1 wide receiver with targets. And here, kind of in the middle of the second round, is where I start to feel comfortable taking Davante Adams. Sure, he's still a stud wide receiver, no doubt about it, but I'm a little worried about Jimmy G, especially on the deep ball. Jimmy G, not a very good deep ball passer at all. Derek Carr, a pretty good deep ball thrower, and he's willing to take those shots. I don't think we're going to see that with Jimmy G, but Davante Adams is still going to have a very high target share. He's still a great player. I'll happily take him in the second. I'll also happily take Devonta Smith. Talked about him a little bit when I talked about A.J. Brown. I think he's great. He's kind of like Jalen Waddle. He's a 1B to A.J. Brown's 1A. He's a great wide receiver. He'd probably be the number 1 wide receiver on most teams in the NFL. There's enough to go around for both of these guys. So if I don't get A.J. Brown in the first, I'll happily take Devonta Smith in the second. And then if I didn't get Jamar Chase in the first, I will happily take T. Higgins in the second. Another guy like a 1B to Jamar Chase's 1A. This is another wide receiver who could be a number 1 wide receiver on a lot of teams in the NFL. An absolute stud, a great player, still young, entering his prime. So Higgins, another wide receiver, I'll happily take in the second if I'm not going running back. I'll also say here in the second round, I will consider Amari Cooper and Calvin Ridley late in the round if I don't like any of the wide receivers, if they're all gone, if I don't like any of the running backs. I think they have the most upside of the remaining wide receivers. They're in a tier of their own for me. These guys have tremendous weekly ceilings in great situations, tied to great quarterbacks. If they're there at the end of the second round and none of those other wide receivers are available, I will consider them. All right, now on to round 3. This is the time where I will start considering early QB because we're getting here to the point where there's only really a couple wide receivers I love. There's some running backs I like in this round, but round 3 is a very tricky round. There's a lot of uncertainty with guys. Running backs who are like good but not great. Wide receivers who are kind of like, do I really want to draft this guy? So if one of the stud QBs is there, I'll happily take him. So that would be Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes, or Josh Allen for me. If one of those guys are there in the second round, I'll go ahead and draft him. But I would also consider Mark Andrews here, assuming you're in a format where tight end is valuable, and that would be a format where you start 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, 1 or 0 flexes. If you're in a league that starts more players than that, 3 wide receivers in a flex, multiple flexes, then tight end isn't so important. I might pass on Mark Andrews depending on who is there, but I'm really coming around on Mark Andrews. I think he's going to be a beast in this offense. I think we're going to see a guy closer to 2 years ago than the guy we saw last year. Lamar Jackson just got paid. He's going to be motivated. He's going to be playing hard. I love Mark Andrews this year. So if you're in that type of league, look at Mark Andrews in the third. Now, the reason I'm okay going wide receiver in these drafts is because in the third round, this is where you can find some pretty decent RB1s. Now, they're not going to be bona fide stud, potential to be the RB1, but they can be the anchor of your team. Of course, if any of the running backs I talked about have fallen to the third round, go ahead and grab them. Also, if guys like Nick Chubb or Derrick Henry somehow fall to the third round, absolutely draft them here. I don't think these guys have the upside the rest of the fantasy community believes they have. I think they're going to be very good. I think they could be top 8, top 7 running backs, but they don't have the upside to be the RB1, like those league-winning, legendary game changers, which is why I don't want to draft them in one of the first 2 rounds. But here in round 3, if somehow they fall, I will happily take them. I'll also happily draft Ramondre Stevenson here. He keeps dodging the bullets, the Dalvin Cook bullet, the Ezekiel Elliott bullet. It looks like he's going to be the guy. Of course, we still have some weeks left. It could change. But as of now, he looks like the guy. He's going to catch a ton of passes, had 69 receptions last year, only scored 6 touchdowns, which should go up because Damian Harris is gone. And really, who else is going to steal goal line work from him now? Probably nobody. So Ramondre Stevenson, another running back, I'll happily take in the third. And then if you want to shoot for upside, I will take Jahmyr Gibbs in the third here, especially in your PPR leagues. I think this guy can catch 80 plus passes this year. He'll get enough run on the ground, and he's got enough juice that he can score a decent amount of touchdowns, even if he's not getting goal line work, which I don't think he will. So in your PPR leagues, I think Jahmyr Gibbs is just fine as your RB1. As is Najee Harris. I know he disappointed greatly last year, disappointed me greatly last year, but he's the workhorse here. He's going to get all the goal line work. No, he's not going to catch as many passes as he needs to be a top 5, top 3 running back, but he can still certainly be a top 10 running back as your RB1. That is fine in the third round. And then Etienne, I know there's a lot of worry here about Tank Bigsby, and I do think Bigsby is going to have a role, and I know Etienne's not going to catch a lot of passes, and his touchdown total might not be super high. But this is a great player. He's explosive. He can still rack up a ton of yards, 1,200, 1,300, 1,400 rushing yards this year, 8 to 10 touchdowns. And if he does that, that's going to be just fine as your RB1 in the third round. Now, I said third round wide receivers are ugly. I'm not joking. Of course, if any of the wide receivers I've already talked about are available, grab them. But if not, you're looking at guys like Deebo Samuel, who I think is okay. I mean, he's got upside. I don't like his usage. The situation's a little unsure who's going to be the quarterback. There's a lot of mouths to feed there, but I guess he seems okay, as does Keenan Allen. He's got a high floor in PPR leagues. I don't think he has a ceiling anymore, but he has a decent floor at least. And then if you want to shoot more for ceiling, you could draft a guy like Christian Watson. I know it's going to feel really early. It's going to feel really gross to draft Christian Watson in the third round, but I said they're ugly, which is why I don't mind going wide receiver, and then grabbing one of the running backs I talked about. But Christian Watson has tremendous upside. He just needs Jordan Love to get him the ball. So if you want to kind of reach a little bit for the upside, you could go with Christian Watson. Hey, before I tell you how I would attack round 4, here's some exciting news I need to share. Introducing Draft Lane, the ultimate app for every fantasy football enthusiast. Take a trip down memory lane with our unique league history feature, giving you a comprehensive view of all your past leagues. Challenge yourself by comparing your historical performance against your league mates. Climb up the ranks and strive for the top spot in the Draft Lane rankings. Connect directly with Pierre and myself to receive answers to all your burning fantasy questions. Experience the ultimate draft companion. We can tell you exactly who to pick when you're on the clock to help you draft that winning roster. During the season, rely on DraftLane to help you set winning lineups, make strategic waiver pickups, and even get personalized trade advice all through our user-friendly app. Download DraftLane for free on the App Store or Google Play for Android phones today. Now in round 4, hopefully you have your running back, or you're going to decide not to take a running back yet, because running back gets ugly. Of course, if one of those running backs I talked about is still on the board, happily draft them. But really in round 4, the only running back that even interests me is Breece Hall. And even he barely interests me coming off ACL. He did dodge the Dalvin Cook bullet for now. It looked almost certain like Dalvin Cook was going to sign. Obviously, there was something they couldn't work out because he was there all day and he left without a contract. So there must be some little tiny holdups here, either with the length of the deal, guaranteed money, who knows, but there's got to be something. But Dalvin Cook may change his mind and say, you know what, it's fine. I'll sacrifice. I want to play football and be there, in which case Breece Hall becomes borderline undraftable. But as of right now, he's pretty much the only running back I would be eyeing in round 4, assuming one of the other ones haven't fallen. Now, round 4, there are some wide receivers I really like in this range. Obviously, any of the wide receivers I've talked about, if they're there, grab them. This is a spot where if Christian Watson is still on the board, I will happily take him and I will gamble on that upside. Same with a guy like Christian Kirk. I love this Jacksonville offense this year. I love this passing attack. Give me as much of it as I can. Christian Kirk has tremendous weekly ceiling, as does Mike Williams for the Chargers. I know nobody wants to draft him because he's always hurt, but if this is the year he's not always hurt, you're going to regret it, because in this Kellen Moore offense, his role is going to be fantastic. Mike Williams in the 4th as potentially your wide receiver 2 or your flex is tremendous. Same with DJ Moore. I love him in Chicago with Justin Fields. This offense is going to pass more. No, they're not going to be one of the pass heaviest offenses, but they will throw enough to support DJ Moore. And really around here, I mean, you got Darnell Mooney, you got Chase Claypool. There's not a lot of competition. He's by far the best player here. He's going to be the weapon. We're already hearing such good reports out of camp. Love DJ Moore. Also really love Drake London in this spot. I know people are worried about Desmond Ridder, but Desmond Ridder just has to be good enough, and all they really have to do is throw about 30 times per game. And Drake London as your wide receiver 2 or flex will be more than good enough. And I'm not taking any tight ends in round 4, but I will take some QBs if they're still on the board. So for me, that would be Lamar Jackson. Already talked about it. This offense, Lamar Jackson, I think he's going to ball out this year. Has a chance to be the #1 scoring QB, similar to his MVP season. I think he's going to be awesome. Also, Joe Burrow, of course, if we hear he's going to be ready for week 1 or maybe week 2 at the latest, I'll go ahead with Joe Burrow. This guy has missed training camp every year of his career. It hasn't mattered. He's been fantastic. So as long as we're not hearing he's going to miss 5 weeks or whatever, like Jamar Chase was saying, then I'll take him. I'll also draft Justin Fields in this round. Tremendous upside. Last year, the QB5, despite missing 2 games, and he was the QB32 after week 5. Once they started letting him run, that was it. He blew up. He's going to throw more this year. He's going to put up better passing numbers to go along with those crazy rushing numbers. Another quarterback I think has QB1 upside. So there you go. That's how you're going to dominate the beginning of your draft. I'll do this again for the middle and the late rounds. But in the meantime, check out this video right here.